Okay, we're recording, and I don't want to spend too much time on this because I feel like I've reviewed this several times. If you watch the last 2 or 3 lectures, I recap almost everything every lecture. So let's keep this brief. Remember, Phaedrus is the first speech. He's the one that says love inspires you to do good things. We question that, does it always inspire you to do good things? Maybe if you love somebody evil, it might make you do bad things. Or, there are other circumstances that might mitigate you being a good person. Simply because you're in love doesn't guarantee virtuous, brave, honorable activity. Pausanias, you could argue, improves this. He says that and Desiree asks, Pausanias was Agathon's lover? Wow, I didn't get that when I was reading it. Yeah, it's very subtle. It's very subtle. Yeah, but yeah, he's younger, and in fact, so his speech. I was just about to say before I noticed your comment over there. Pausanias, and to me, I think that kind of. This is my reading, and there's no way to prove it, but kind of subtly, I think that the fact that he is Agathon's lover, and he's much younger than Agathon. I think his speech is sort of like, in a way, he's responding to the haters, because remember, he says that there's this difference between a common versus a heavenly love. The common love is the one that is really vulgar and just has to do with trying to have sex, and you don't really care too much about the intelligence of the partner, whereas the heavenly is like you have this deep connection and you care about their soul, and you know and you don't go for the super young men. You wait till they have a little bit of beard, a little bit of hair. I think he says on their beard. And I think maybe he's young, but he's got a little bit of a beard growing in. So even though he might be biased and his speech might be couched in his own sort of terms from his own perspective, I still think he's making a relevant point, right? There's certainly a difference between pursuing somebody simply for sexual interests, and then there's another type of love. We're sure, you're attracted to them sexually, of course, that's why it's eros, not just the other kinds of love. But that's not the only thing. You just want to be near them. You care about them. You want them to be a good person, and all that. Oh, yeah, and he said, yeah, of course, he does say that heavenly love is only between men. That's in fact, this changes, I think, not until you get to Socrates. Socrates seems to advocate for love between a man and a woman, that he says that's the highest. We're not going to probably get that far today, but all these speeches, they're all kind of sexist. Women are inferior to men, so the love between men is the greatest or something. So yeah, and Eryximachus, I covered him, I think, probably more extensively than I should have. I find his speech the most mysterious, so I feel like I needed to comment on it a little bit more. So if you didn't watch the last video, you should review it. But this is, he's the physician, he's the medical professional or scientist, as he calls it, the science of medicine. And so for him, love is it's a force of nature. It's not just this attraction we feel between human beings. He says that love, or eros, guides everything that happens in the universe. It guides medicine. He starts with his own profession. He says that medicine, as a physician, he's trying to find a balance within the body of his unhealthy subjects, right? So he, like Pausanias, he believes that there's an unhealthy versus a healthy love, a diseased versus a healthy love, which it's not quite clear what he means by this. Maybe he means the same thing as Pausanias, but when he's using these medical uh, terminology or parallels or metaphors, he talks about how love guides his medical practice. He talks about how when someone's unhealthy, it's an imbalance of opposing elements within their body. Too much heat or too much cold. Those two elements need to balance out, dry and wet. This is a very primitive approach to medicine, of course, but the point is you've got these opposing forces within our body that somehow either need to be encouraged if they're too little, or they have to be sort of depleted if it's too much, and you have to find this sort of balance between, again, opposing elements in the body. That's what medicine does, and that's basically, as Eric Simicus puts it, that's the physician knowing the proper effects, how to encourage the proper sort of love, the kind of balanced sort of love, and to discourage the imbalanced sort of love inside a human body. How this applies to human love, he's not very clear. Again, maybe he just agrees with Pausanias and says, yeah, I agree with him, but this applies to medicine, music. What else does he say? Farming, because all the seasons change and the farmer has to know, like, when to when to plant the seed, when to harvest. It's all based on, the right temperate part of the year, when things aren't too cold or too hot, because when things are too cold, then they just die off, and when they're too hot, same thing, whatever. How this applies to human love, I offered my interpretation. I think maybe he means that when we love somebody, of the proper love, it's either like I said, what Pausanias says, it's just not lust, it's caring about their soul, it's a deeper thing, or maybe he says something about how dissimilar subjects desire dissimilar objects, or are attracted to dissimilar objects. So the object of love is something that's dissimilar. And when he uses the metaphor of medicine, or this analogy in medicine, talking about finding a balance of elements in the body, maybe, and again, my interpretation, what he's talking about is how one has to find a lover who complements you, who might be different but yet complementary. This ties into the Greek philosopher Heraclitus that he mentions, and I would argue it is a bit akin to sort of this Taoist philosophy, the ancient Chinese Taoist philosophy of the yin and the yang. So love is a balance of these two forces, hot, cold, male, female, whatever. Eric Simicus doesn't seem to. He's not like Pausanias or Aristophanes. They both seem to think that the love between men is the highest, and Phaedrus seems to have a bias towards that too. He doesn't come out and say it, but all of his examples sort of make it seem that way. All his examples are between two men. So we get to Aristophanes, and he's a poet, right? He's, well, not poet in our sense of the word, but poet in the ancient Greek sense of the word, in the sense of a creator. He's a creative type. We would call him a playwright now. He wrote plays. He wrote comedies. They were funny. And I think that you might get a laugh hearing the story that he tells about love, and what love is, and what explains this attraction that we have for other people. And he provides us with a myth that reveals something about human nature. And this is where I ended class last time. So let me jump ahead to the slide that I had. This is not particularly technical. This is not some sort of like official interpretation, but one way that this is sort of what I label this theory of Aristophanes. I call it the soulmate theory. You might debate that soulmate means something different, or I don't like that. Maybe there's another way to describe Aristophanes' view of love that's more accurate. But to me, what he's basically talking about is very much like it's very much like what most of us think about when we think about a soulmate. Desiree agrees. Thank you. So, basically the idea is that we once had a partner who we were fused with, physically fused with. We were attached to them like a Siamese twin. And so I went over this myth last time, but we can start with this. I'll repeat it, and then we'll move on from there. But so we all were once paired, either with some, if we were homosexual, if we're a gay man, it was like double men, right? We had like two male heads, 2 arms, 4 arms, 4 legs, two, jiggly bits, and some of us were double women, and some were half man, half woman. But we were double. We had, again, two sets of every organ, and apparently that's how we started. In the beginning of time, humans were once we were once double. And we were very happy in this state. Apparently we were very happy. We would basically do cartwheels and spin around. That's sort of how we moved about, just jumping around with our arms stretched out. And it was really awesome, but we got full of ourselves. And so we ended up deciding to try to conquer Mount Olympus. And so the human beings started rolling up Mount Olympus to conquer the gods, and the gods would not have that. And Zeus was thinking about destroying all humanity, but he thought twice. He said, the gods, convened and thought, well, we can't kill humans because then nobody will worship us. So we need somebody to worship us and keep us entertained and all this. So instead, they weakened us. And how'd they weaken us? They sliced us in half. And so basically, we were helpless from that point on, and we were lost from that point on. And the way that Aristophanes describes it is that love is this seeking for our other half. And so we don't feel complete until we find that other person to make us complete. And then we can live our lives content and in happiness and be fulfilled. Okay. And let me find, there's a few passages here, there's at least two or three. He kind of repeats himself a bit. There's at least two or three passages where he sums this up pretty well. Let me try to find one of those. Probably around page 27 or 28. On 27, I think, is the first place where he kind of summarizes it. At the very bottom of page 27. This is on line, if you have a different version, it's line 191E. It's a little bit above that, actually. But he says, each of us then is a matching half of a human whole, because each was sliced like a flatfish, two out of one, and each of us is always seeking the half that matches him. Right? So again, we're missing our other half. And love, when we meet somebody and we feel this for them, that's what it is. We found our other half. Let's skip forward to 28, the first full paragraph on page 28, line 192C, around about there, a little bit above that as well. He says, when a person meets the half that is his very own, whatever his orientation, whether it's to young men or not, something wonderful happens. The two are struck from their senses by love, by a sense of belonging to one another, and by desire. And they don't want to be separated from one another, not even for a moment. These are the people who finish out their lives together and still cannot say what it is they want from one another. No one would think it is the intimacy of sex, that mere sex is the reason that each lover takes so great and deep a joy in being with the other. It's obvious that the soul of every lover longs for something else. His soul cannot say what it is, but like an oracle, it has a sense of what it wants. And like an oracle, it hides behind a riddle. So there's this sort of mysterious, gravitation that we feel towards this other person that we can't explain and we can't put into words, but he understands what it is, right? It's because we were once together. We were once, back ancient times, I guess in our previous life or something, we were once bonded with this other soul. And I mentioned this in the last video, so maybe I shouldn't repeat myself too much. Some of you maybe have already watched that. But again, I mentioned this before I hit record, that I didn't get much class discussion out of it. So maybe you guys have more stuff to say about it. Hopefully we can have some more fun with this. If not, no worries. We can move on to Agathon. But I mentioned that this is my least favorite of the speeches. Even though the popular way to read this is that each speech is getting closer to truth, and it's, so this must be like second to best after Socrates. Agathon is next, and so I guess he's getting closer to the truth, and then Socrates comes and kind of corrects everybody. But I, for one, have my issues, my reservations about this theory. But before I tear into it and remind you, if you haven't watched the video, maybe I'm not reminding you, I'll tell you some of my objections why I don't like it, and if you have any objections, maybe I should hear yours first. Um, but this passage I just read, in a way, this makes me sympathize somewhat with what Aristophanes is saying. In fact, I guess you could argue that every one of these speeches, however flawed they all have something to say about love that is, to me, relevant. It points to something that most of us, I would argue, probably all of us, at some point in our lives, have experienced in regards to this emotion. When he says that, you meet this person and there's just something about them and you don't really know what it is, and it's been so long, since I felt that. And so maybe this feeling is a delusion, right? I'm this like older guy. I'm not young anymore. I've already like fallen in love and out of love, and maybe I'm bitter about it or something, and so it's hard for me. But I remember a time when I felt this way about somebody, and I couldn't explain it. Like, yeah, like I don't know why I like her more than her. They're both equal. Like, I guess like on paper they're the same, right? Like this one is just as attractive as the other. They have similar interests, similar hobbies. They might even look alike, but for some reason I just want this one. She's the one. That's why I call this the soulmate theory. This is people talk about the one. He's the one, she's the one. I gotta have the one. That's part of the problem, though, with the theory. That's probably part of the reason I don't like the theory. It's kind of ridiculous to me to think that there's only one person in the entire universe for you. I think that stacks the odds against you if you're looking for love. And also, too, it assumes that unless you find this person, unless you find another person to fall in love with and share this romantic relationship with, then you're not complete, right? That you can't stand on your own. And so this seems to advocate for a type of codependent relationship, and I'm not so sure I could advocate for that approach to love. Like, people get like fixated on this. But on the other hand, again, I can kind of get what he says. Like sometimes you just, and it goes the other way too. Like, I've had it where I sort of thought intellectually, are just just thinking about it, like, this person, I should be attracted to them, but I'm just not. I should want to date them, I should want to be with them, but there's just in the last meeting, I forgot who it was, but one of the students said there's just no spark. I think it was Milan or something, Milan Hayes. She was like, yeah, just no spark. But what is the spark? I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just chemical, right? Maybe it's just biological. Maybe any biologist or psychologist in here, you might know about you get the honeymoon phase. I mentioned that in the last lecture. The first 90 days of a relationship, you get this dopamine spike. It actually changes your chemistry, and so you get this spike. It's like a drug. I mean, it's the same hormone that's released when you do drugs, this dopamine spike. And then, of course, you also get, what's the other love hormone? Is it not cortisol? That's the stress hormone. Oxytocin or whatever. Yeah, there's a certain reaction you get, and they say that after like generally 30 to 90 days that might wear off, right? So this whole like, they're the one, I gotta be, they're with, maybe it's just a chemical thing. Maybe it's, that's why you can't explain it. Your body is just telling you this is the one. You don't even know why. But again, I think that this sort of theory, it leaves itself open to, I hate to use the word delusional, because that, to delusion, because that's such a strong word, but people get sort of trapped. They fall in love with an idea. They construct in their mind, there's got to be this soulmate out there for me, and they imagine almost like this carbon copy of themselves, or maybe this image of the lover they're looking for is based on usually just some fantasy, right? Just maybe like they're a combination of all their favorite celebrities and rock stars, or hip hop artists or whatever, and a list of just superficial qualities, and maybe that might get in the way of them meeting somebody who actually is compatible with them. And also they might be fixated on somebody who really isn't the one, and stick with them and pass up other opportunities for somebody who's actually better for them because they've convinced themselves somehow, I don't know what it is, but this is the person, you know, and it's like, they're not, they don't like you back. They don't feel the same way. They treat you like crap. You're just fixated on them, you know, they're the one that got away and you want them back. So again, I think I've said enough about Aristophanes, and it doesn't look like anybody else has anything else to say except for LOL. So I guess we can move on to Agathon, unless somebody wants to jump in and defend him or join me in criticizing him. I'm not seeing anything. All right. Well, okay. Well, let's move on to Agathon then.
No, Professor, I'm sorry. This is Lola Jones. I just thought it was so funny.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you said it's like a codependency. And you know, that's
yeah. I mean, he's basically advocating, and I honestly get kind of angry because I think that like movies and TV, they kind of perpetuate this. Like this is the kind of romance that you see in like the movies, and I don't think it's healthy, you know. Like it's kind of fun.
Right.
You know, it's kind of fun when you watch the movie, but it's like my sister, she really can't stand and this pisses some of my friends off because you know they watched these movies when they were kids, but she can't stand The Little Mermaid because she says that movie it sends a wrong message to children. Like basically, and it's been so long since I saw that movie, but like, you know, if you think about it, you know, The Little Mermaid, she meets this prince on the beach and immediately falls in love with him, like love at first sight. And she's willing to basically turn her back on her family, turn her back on her father, and change her whole self, become a human, no longer a mermaid, just for this prince that she met, you know, because he's the one, you know, and it's like, you know,
some type of obsession.
Right. It's a kind of obsessive. People look at it as people look at it as romantic, and I guess it kind of sounds good in a poem or in a, you know, some fancy movie, but in real life, I don't think it's healthy. You know, I think it's good that if people have like a deep connection, obviously you want to have a deep connection with somebody you love, but like this is almost like I can't live without you. You know, it's like, whoa. We need to complement each other.
Insanity, brink of insanity.
Right. So, yeah, I'm not a big fan of this, and the translators here in the introduction, they make an interesting interpretation. They say that like Aristophanes, even though he's a comedic poet, that this is also tragic. That this is a tragic speech. But you said it's funny, and I kind of do too. I think it is kind of funny, especially when you look at the myth of these people who are like rolling around and doing cartwheels and then getting cut in half. It's kind of comical. But I can see why they would say it's tragic, because in the end, it's like you're incomplete and you're in this unsettling situation unless you can somehow find your other half. And again, I don't think that's a healthy way of approaching love. I don't think that's a good way of looking at it. But it is tragic, and it also makes it seem like pretty bad odds that you're going to find. Were there like 6 billion people on Earth? I'm assuming you probably only go for one of the two sexes. Maybe I guess if you're bisexual, you have a better chance, right? But most of us either just swing one way or the other. And so you've got like 3 billion people to choose from, and only one person out of 3 billion is right for you. What's the chance you're going to meet that person? That's pretty sad. You know, and you're never going to be complete unless you do. That is kind of tragic. And so I sure hope this isn't correct. I would prefer maybe the soul mates in the plural theory. Not that I'm saying, you know, you should have like a big harem or something like that. Or, you know, not that I'm against that, but I'm just saying the idea that there's only one person that's right for you doesn't seem a very healthy way to approach love. Certainly out of this big world of people, there's a lot of people who would be good for you, you know, and the odds that you're going to meet them, I think, increase when you think about it that way. Now, to be fair to Aristophanes, I think he says something towards the end here where he he basically implies that if you live a good and virtuous life and you do right, that the gods will guide you towards your other half. So I get, if you're a good person, you'll find that other half. Even though it seems, pretty unlikely in this great wide world. I still don't like this though. It's as you say, Lola, it's codependency. It totally is. I mean, I don't see how it's any different from being codependent. I can't live without you, right? Well, what does Agathon have to say? He's the tragic poet, but and this is where I think the translators in their introduction here, I think they're kind of right that his speech is not tragic. It's actually pretty uplifting, and it's probably um, the least unified of the speeches. At least for me, it's the hardest one to summarize. I mean, I think I could summarize all the speeches in one sentence very easily. I would hesitate to do that with Agathon because he seems to say a lot of things about love. He says a lot of things about eros. And perhaps this is why some people think this is an improvement. This idea that each of these speeches gets better because Agathon sees the need not just to praise love, but to explain what love is, to clearly define it, and to list all the qualities that it has. And so maybe that's more philosophical. That's getting closer to a fuller picture of Eros, closer to the grand finale, the best speech, Socrates' speech. Um, but let's go ahead and read right from the start here. I'm not going to read the whole darn speech, but let's read the opening lines, and then we'll kind of jump around after that. But really, like I said, it's hard to sum his speech up. But we'll get a list started. I think that if I had to, I have sort of a guess on how I might sort of tie everything together. There's a clue I think in the last few lines of his speech that sort of I think give you a clue as to some sort of sense of an underlying theme for all this stuff, all the list of things that he sort of spews out about love. So this is on page 32 if you've got our text. If you don't, it's line 195A, about 4 lines above the A. He says, I wish first to speak of how I ought to speak, and only then to speak. So that's kind of a confusing phrase, but in other words, first I'm going to tell you how this is supposed to go down, the proper way to give a speech in praise of love. In my opinion, you see, all those who've spoken before me did not so much celebrate the God as congratulate human beings on the good things that come to them from the God. So instead of praising love, which was the object of the speeches, he's arguing that all the speeches before, all they talked about were the great gifts that humans got from love. But they didn't praise the God itself and the God's nature, Eros, or Cupid if you're the Roman. But who it is who gave these gifts, what he is like, no one has spoken about that. And so only one method is correct for every praise. So here's how you're supposed to praise. Here's what Agathon says, the proper way to praise. You must explain what qualities in the subject of your speech enable him to give the benefits for which we praise him. So now in the case of love, it is right for us to praise him first for what he is, and afterwards for his gifts. Okay, so we have to talk about Eros and the great qualities of Eros. And then once we get a clear picture of the God himself, then we can talk about what these great gifts are and why they're so great. Okay. So how does he start? He says, I maintain then that while all the gods are happy, love, if I may say so without giving offense, is the happiest of them all. For he is the most beautiful and the best. Okay, so let's just put all that together. The first thing he says is that love is the happiest. Okay, so Eros is the happiest, most beautiful, and the best, which is quite a general term. The best, like the best what? The best God? Wow. That's quite a lot. Don't let Zeus hear you say that. His great beauty lies in this. Okay, so he's giving us, I guess, evidence or an argument for his beauty. Why is Eros beautiful? Um, First, he's the youngest of the gods, right? And he's addressing Phaedrus. He says, first Phaedrus, because remember Phaedrus, that was the first speech. Phaedrus said that he's the oldest of the gods. Agathon saying no, right? Eros is actually the youngest. Okay. Why would he say that, you think? This is not very politically correct. But why is love the youngest, according to Agathon? For those of you who did the reading and remember, I mean, it's kind of right there. Even if you didn't do the reading and you got your book in front of you, you just read the next 2 or 3 lines right where I left off. Why does he say that Eros, love, is young? Well, I'll give you a clue. He seems to be operating under, yeah, Desiree's got it, but, and I'll mention her answer in a minute, but he seems to be operating under an opposite assumption as Eryximachus. Remember, Eryximachus said that dissimilar things desire objects that are themselves dissimilar, so opposites attract. Agathon seems to be implying that like attracts like, that things that are young go towards other things that are young, right? Attract other things that are young. And so as Desiree put in the comments here, she's quoting from the text, he flees old age, right? He flees from old age. This is not very politically correct. It's sort of saying like no one loves old people. They love what, you know, they're attracted, they're drawn, they feel eros, at least that type of love towards the young. He says he proves my point by fleeing old age, headlong, fast moving though it is. Love was born to hate old age and will come nowhere near it. Love always lives with young people and is one of them. The old story holds good that like is always drawn to like. See, there it is. You know, he's contradicting Eryximachus. Like is drawn to like. And I guess Aristophanes is more with Agathon here, right? Aristophanes, the whole soulmate theory, to me, I don't think he comes out and says it, but it's your other half, right? It completes you. So it seems like you're 2 peas in a pod, not that you are opposites that attract one another. Lola saying love would be pure. I'm not so sure if that's implicit in what he's saying here, although I'm guessing that if you said that to these people, they would all, oh yeah, it's pure, because that just sounds good, but I don't know if that's like obvious in what he just said. It's young. Yeah, I guess maybe like innocent. Yeah, like it's got this naivete about it or something. Maybe that would be implied by youngest. He stays young forever. Those old stories of Hesiod and Parmenides, those things happen under necessity, not love. You know, he mentions, this is stuff that most of you probably aren't that familiar with because they no longer teach you guys Greek mythology in school. But in the ancient Greek myths, before the Olympian gods, before Zeus and all those gods took over, Poseidon and Hera and all them, the Titans were the more ancient gods that ruled. And before them, you know, there were just these sort of primal forces that controlled everything. And each time these gods warred with each other, right? Zeus killed his father Kronos, and Kronos devoured his young and all this stuff. So it was very violent. There were all these like violent, there was like, you know, fathers killing sons, sons killing fathers. You know, they were gods, but still they were fighting each other. And so he's arguing that if love was the oldest god, then none of that stuff would have ever happened. There wouldn't be all this strife and tension and war between the Titans and the Olympian gods if love was around back then. So that's part of his kind of a weak argument, I guess. You have to believe in Greek mythology to follow that, but that's his argument. He's young. Okay, I'm skipping a bit. This is what line 195D. What's the next thing he says? He's young, but besides being young, he's delicate. Okay, so the next thing he says is that love is delicate. Okay, why does he say that love is delicate? It takes a poet as good as Homer to show how delicate the god is. For Homer says that mischief is a god and that she is delicate. Well, that her feet are delicate, at least. He says, hers are delicate feet. Not on the ground does she draw nigh. She walks instead upon the heads of men. A lovely proof, I think, to show how delicate she is. She doesn't walk on anything hard. She only walks on what is soft. We shall use the same proof about love then to show that he is delicate, for he walks not on earth, not even on people's skulls, which are not really soft at all, but in the softest of all things that are. There he walks, there he has his home. What's he talking about here? Where is love located? Why he says love is delicate. Why do I know it's delicate? Because it's only in the most delicate places. It's not in places that are hard, right? Not even on people's skulls, only in places that are soft. Like, where is love located? Where's love at? When you love somebody, where's that at? Where is your love located? Does it have a location? Again, this is another answer. This is another question you can answer by just reading the next sentence right where I left off. Where does love make his home? Lola says the heart, which, depending on what you mean by heart, I'm assuming what you mean, you're correct, right? He says the soul, right? The soul. But it's in your spirit, right? It's not it's not in a physical thing. It's in a spiritual thing. It's in your soul, as he puts it. He makes his home in the characters, in the souls of gods and men, and not even in every soul. Not every soul that comes along. When he encounters a soul with a harsh character, he turns away. But when he finds a soft and a gentle character, he settles down in it. Always then he's touching with his feet and with the whole of himself what is softest in the softest places. He must therefore be most delicate. Right. So again, in our soul, in our characters, in our hearts, as Lola puts it, right? It's a metaphysical thing. It's our feeling, it's our emotion. It's not a physical thing necessarily. Okay. So that's why he says it's delicate. And again, it won't even be in anybody's soul. If you have a harsh soul or a mean soul, love's is not gonna be located there. It's gonna fly away from you, at least for the moment, while you're angry and mean and all that stuff. Okay, what else does he say? He's youngest, most delicate. In addition, he has a fluid, supple shape. He's fluid and supple. Right. Fluid, supple shape. Why would he say that he's fluid and supple? Okay, well, let's read here to get a clue. If he were hard, he would not be able to enfold a soul completely or escape notice when he first entered or withdrew from it. Besides, his graceful good looks prove that he is balanced and fluid in his nature. Everyone knows that love has extraordinary good looks. And between ugliness and love, there is unceasing war. Okay. So, he's already talked about that he's beautiful, pretty much for the same reason that he's the youngest. Love is drawn towards beauty, not ugliness. Love is drawn. But why does he say he's fluid and supple? What's the deal with that? He says it's because if he were hard, he would not be able to enfold a soul completely or escape notice when he first entered into it or withdrew from it. what's the point he's making there? Why does love have to be fluid and supple? What is it about our experience of love that makes him sort of clues him in about that? Whenever you, and again, I'm assuming all of you have felt this at some point. You've had a crush at least on somebody. You saw somebody for the first time and you're like, who's that? Um, was it something that you saw coming? Were you like, okay, there's a person that I just saw walk into the room, and in about 45 seconds, I'm going to fall in love with them. Okay, 10 seconds, 9, 8, 7. Here it comes. All right. Oh, there it is. I'm in love. Now I'm in love. I'm in love now. Now I love them. Is that how it works? Like, yeah, of course not. Desiree says no. And how about, like, maybe you fall in love with somebody and then you fall out of love? Like, you still might care for them, but you don't have that passion anymore. I'm asking the same question about that. Is that something that you see coming? Are you like, well, in about 1 week, I'm no longer going to love this person? Or in about 3 days, I'm going to stop loving them? Okay, I got 1 more day left, 12 hours. Right. Exactly, Desiree. You don't see it coming. It just happens. Right. So as he puts it, it completely enfolds your soul. It escapes notice when it first enters or withdraws. It's not something that just, oh, there it's coming. I feel it. It's coming in. Now I have love. I saw you, you sneaky love. I saw you coming. No, it's just there. It's like, bam. Right. And this is why I guess in the Greek mythology, they always portray Eros as the Cupid with the arrow. Cupid shoots you with the arrow, and as soon as you get shot, it's like a shot to the heart, and you just feel it. You don't see it coming, and then it's gone sometimes, right? All of a sudden, you're like, I don't really feel it anymore for this person. I've lost it. So love is fluid and supple. All right. What else does he say? Love is moral. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on this. This is kind of interesting. So love is moral. Love is the most moral of the gods, and he uses what does he use? Moderation, bravery, justice. Are those the only virtues that he mentions? So there's moderation, justice. Oh, and wisdom. So these are like the 4 cardinal Greek virtues. And so, yeah, moderation, bravery, justice, and wisdom. Love is moderate. He has the biggest share of moderation because he's able to moderate our pleasures and our passions. This is, to me, I don't know if this is the greatest argument. It seems like when we're in love, we're immoderate. Like we're actually drawn to do erratic things and crazy behaviors. But maybe Agathon will say, well, that's the bad love. Remember that we're talking about unhealthy versus healthy, heavenly versus common. The heavenly is always good. I don't know. Maybe he'll say something like that. But I would say, Eros it's not always moderate. It might make you behave. If you love somebody and they might make you walk the line. Like the old maybe you've heard the old Johnny Cash song, because you're mine, I walk the line. It's like because you're my wife. I don't go drinking and partying, and I stay. But ironically, when he was writing that song and made a big smash hit, he was basically touring the country, and his wife was at home raising his kids, and he was like having an affair with what was her name? I don't know, but yeah, he didn't really walk the line exactly. But that's the idea, right? Is that like love will moderate you in that way, it keeps you straight, keeps you on the straight path, I guess. And it's brave. Why is it brave? Because love, Eros, can even stand up to Ares, the god of war, because Ares couldn't control his love for Aphrodite, you know. So even the god of war, who's like the bravest of the gods, succumbs to Eros, right? Even the bravest warrior has a soft spot, you know, for his love or something like this. Um, wisdom. Uh, he doesn't really say much about this, and what he does say I find very unconvincing, to be honest, with you, right? And he doesn't really say much to back up the justice. um, you know, I guess at the beginning he says something like, love is neither the cause nor the victim of injustice. He does no wrong to gods. If anything has an effect on him, it's never by violence. Violence never touches love. Like, you would never want to hurt somebody. You would never want to screw somebody over. You would never want to be unfair or unjust to somebody if you loved them. But on the flip side, I'm also questioning this as well, because you might be drawn, maybe not to be unjust to your lover, but you might be drawn to be unjust and unfair to other people in order to help your lover, right? You'll do unjust things for the sake of your lover. Again, Agathon could go back and say, well, I'm talking about the good love, not the, you know, common. I'm talking about the heavenly kind of love. He doesn't mention, as far as I can tell, though, that distinction. He doesn't draw from Pausanias's speech or Eryximachus's speech, as far as I can tell. Um, but the part about wisdom, this is where I also have a bit of a question for Agathon. And again, I think that the popular consensus is that he's right about this. But if we really think about it, I don't think he's right. So he says something about, well, he's wise because the god, and this is line 196e, the god is so skilled a poet that he can make others into poets. Once love touches someone, anyone becomes a poet, however uncultured he had been before. This, we may fittingly observe, testifies that love is a good poet, good in some and every kind of artistic production, for you can't give to another what you don't have yourself, and you can't teach what you don't know. So again, love is a great poet. I guess I can add that's supposed to be a proof of his wisdom, is the fact that love is a good poet. But I'm going to add this as an extra point, because to me it's really problematic. He inspires great poetry. He makes everyone into a poet. So anybody, even if you're like really unartistic and don't have much creativity, if you feel this deep, passionate love for somebody, it makes you want to create, and you create the most beautiful music. You create the most beautiful poetry based on this inspiration that you feel for love. Is that true? Does love inspire the greatest poetry, the greatest art? Like, always? That's a pretty, you know, to me, a problematic. To say always is always going to be problematic. And I just did it. I wrote my own. It's almost always going to be problematic. So what do you think? I want to say that sometimes maybe I'm just a bitter, like, old crotchety old man, and I don't like mushy love songs. But I think sometimes love songs and love poems, or whatever you want to call them, can be some of the worst. Like, they're really cheesy, they're really corny, they're really sappy, I don't know, they're really bad. you know. But so, you know, sometimes they can be beautiful. I don't want to sound like a total uh, heartless human being. I mean, yeah, some love is there's some great, like, you know, I love you know, Barry White is hilarious. You know, I mean, the you know, you're my love, that stuff's hilarious to me. Like, I think that stuff's just funny. But like, I mean, like, some Marvin Gaye, and like, that stuff's like beautiful music, you know. Some of it's just cheesy as get out. I love you, baby. It's like, ugh, cheesy. But yeah, and Desiree says sometimes it can also be pain or anger or sorrow. Yeah, exactly. Like, there's other emotions too. Like, there can be an angry or a sad song. You know, I think, like, almost any song can be good if there's emotion behind it, you know, and it's done very well and expressed very well. But yeah, as Lola says, there's a time that it does. I think this is another claim being made about love that is not always true. Sometimes love makes some great art, sometimes it doesn't, you know. And I remember some interview with Miles Davis where he was basically like, you think I'm cynical about love? You should go watch this interview where he basically, they're talking about all his beautiful love ballads, and some of his music it's beautiful. If you listen to the ballads, the Miles Davis ballads, they're very romantic. I mean, they're smooth. I mean, they're sexy. And he said during some interview, he said, "I don't believe in love. That's just a bunch of bullshit. All that stuff, it's all just made up fairy tales." And, it's like, he's like, "Oh, it's real pretty. I like the song. I'm trying my best Miles Davis impression. He had quite a kind of a gruff sort of voice. Probably because he using his lungs so much with that trumpet. But yeah, he didn't believe in any of this stuff. Even though he was so good at creating the music that expressed these emotions. Maybe he really felt it, and just, maybe he's a bitter guy, and maybe he had that spark in the middle that would come out through his horn playing. I don't know, right? But does love inspire great poetry? Does it inspire great art? I think I'm with Lola. There's sometimes that it does, sure, but always, I don't know. Sometimes it makes a pretty horrible art, pretty horrible. Um, I'm gonna skip over a lot of this stuff just to sort of try to get to the end, because I notice we're getting close to it's like 2 o'clock, so we're short on time. But he mentions that animals reproduce because of love, right? They're born and begotten through love. The artisans and the professionals, the craftsmen, they have a love, they have a respect for their profession. They have a respect for their skill. If they're a doctor or a lawyer, they have a respect for the medical profession or the legal profession. If they're a welder or a blacksmith, I guess back in those days, they have a respect for the trade. And so they because of that guides their work, and they have a work ethic based on that love for their trade. He talks about the gods' quarrels being settled because of love. Let me read this. To me, I mentioned this earlier. This is the last paragraph of his speech before he turns it over to the next speaker, which is going to be Socrates. And if you're looking at your screen, you see this is just almost like just a laundry list of things that he claims are true of love. I guess this is the first part of the speech. I'm going to explain who and what love is, and then seeing his praises. So this last paragraph, this is on page 37, I suppose is the praise. This is and this is the grand finale, which I think tries to draw everything together. And no, sorry, didn't mean to have a play on words there, but in a way, I think that's the theme of his speech, that love draws us all together, draws all things together. It's this force that brings unity and unifies everything. So let's read the speech. This is line 197D. Again, page 37 of the textbook, if you have the textbook. He says, love fills us with togetherness and drains all of our divisiveness. Love calls gatherings like these together. In feasts, in dances, and in ceremonies, he gives the lead. Love moves us to mildness, removes us from wildness. He's a giver of kindness, never of meanness. Gracious, kindly, let wise men see and gods admire. Treasure to lovers, envy to others, father of elegance, luxury, delicacy, grace, yearning, desire. Love cares well for good men, cares not for bad ones. In pain, in fear, in desire or speech, love is our best guide and our guard. He is our comrade and our savior. Ornament of all gods and men, most beautiful leader and the best. Every man should follow love, sing beautifully his hymns. and join with him in the song he sings that charms the mind of God and man. Right, so that's the end of his speech, right? And then he turns it over to the next guy, and obviously, if you've done the reading, you know that Socrates doesn't just jump right into his speech, and he actually kind of chastises the other speakers for going about it the wrong way. Agathon does the same thing, by the way. A lot of people don't notice that, but Agathon, remember, he says that they didn't do the speeches right either. But just to try to sum it up, I'm going to put at the bottom here, love brings togetherness and and ends divisiveness. Ends divisive. So you could say it's like, it's a unifier, right? Love is the great unifier. And again, if I had to sum up Agathon's speech, I guess that's how I would do it, right? You've got, Phaedrus is the love inspires you to be good. Pausanias, love is either common if it's like just lust, or it's heavenly if it's deep and heartfelt and long term. Eryximachus is the doctor with the medical. Eros is this force that guides medicine and art and religion and everything. Aristophanes is the soulmate theory, and Agathon is the great unifier theory. So those are basically the 5 speeches there, and those are the ones, if you want to write on the symposium, those are the ones you're going to write about. So, yeah, Desiree mentioned, Socrates totally picks apart Agathon's speech, and really, I think his criticisms, Socrates' criticisms, are supposed to apply to all the speeches, not just Agathon's. But we don't have a whole lot of time left. I'm kind of wondering if we should move on, or maybe we should just start fresh on Tuesday. We've already finished all the stuff we needed to finish for you guys to be able to do your paper. So I'm happy with that. I think maybe it would be good to stop. Some of you got here a little bit late, so I'm gonna stop the screen share, and we'll pick up right here on Tuesday. So on Tuesday at 11 a.m., I will try to get through all of the symposium. Not all of it. We're not going to finish it. We're not going to read the last part or cover the last part with Alcibiades, but we are going to get through the portion where Socrates gives his speech about love. And I'm going to try to finish it next class. I probably won't be able to finish all of it. Some of it might bleed over to Thursday, but hopefully some of y'all can make it to the 11 a.m. meeting on Tuesday. And we'll wrap up Plato as much as we can. After that, 1 week from today at this time at 1 p.m. To 2:15, we'll definitely finish up whatever's left of Plato if there's anything, and we'll get started on Descartes. We'll probably barely get started on it. So by next week, by the end of the week next week, you need to buy or find another copy, another version of that second textbook that's on the syllabus, Descartes' Meditations on first philosophy. So I guess that's all I've got for today, but we've got like 9 minutes to kill. So I mean, if you want, you're free to go. If you're one of my 1 p.m. students, some of you are here and you're one of my 11 a.m. students. If you're one of my 11 a.m. students, stick around and make sure that you type your name in the chat box so I give you credit for being here. Otherwise, you're free to go. I can just look at the log and I'll give you credit for being here. So, if that's you, feel free to split. Have a good weekend. Looks pretty nasty out there, so be careful with the weather. I'm stopping the video, and I'll see you guys next week, I suppose.